Hello, and welcome back to Fundamentals of People Management, Module 9. I'm Dr. Lon Schiffbauer, and today we're talking about managing conflict. I don't think I'm exaggerating when I say that one of the most challenging aspects of being a people manager is helping people work through conflict, helping them work through their differences and come out on the other end being stronger than they were before going in. This isn't easy by any stretch, and yet is probably, 50% of the job sometimes. So this being the case, it's important that we understand what is conflict in the first place. Well, conflict arises when we perceive that another person is challenging and putting at risk, potentially damaging, something that we care about. We all have goals and objectives in life, and we all have domains of self-worth, ways that we kind of consider ourselves of worth and value to this world. And when somebody else challenges these objectives or domains of self-worth, we feel attacked. This is at the root of conflict. Now, one thing we need to remember is that not all conflict is bad. Yes, there is dysfunctional conflict, and this we really need to try to avoid, work through, mitigate, what have you. But we also have functional conflict. Functional conflict is desirable. We want this. There is gold at the end of that, albeit painful, rainbow. Another aspect of conflict that is worth bearing in mind is that it is bidirectional. Now, what I mean by this is when somebody is challenging my goals or my objectives or my domains of self-worth, it is because they are protecting or asserting their own goals, their own objectives, and their own domains of self-worth. So it's kind of a battle of goals and objectives when we experience conflict. Now, this means that with conflict, we have this weird sort of chicken or the egg thing going on. If you attack my, say, objectives or domain of self-worth, it's because you have perceived that I attacked your goals or objectives. And perhaps I attacked yours because I perceived that you were attacking mine, and so the cycle goes. It's not always clear where the root of this conflict originated. Nevertheless, we need to figure out the origin of this conflict because the path to resolution necessitates that we get to the root conflict as perceived by all the players involved. Okay, so there's our primer on conflict. Now let's get to the good stuff. Let's talk about how to resolve conflict constructively. To do this, we first need to identify the different types of conflict and figure out what is the perceived root issue at play. Now, I know that sounded a little ambiguous. I get it. But different people exercise different types of conflict in different situations to different effects. So, at the risk of being reductive, let's kind of name some of these people and situations and figure out how to work through them. The first group I want to talk about are the non-conformers. Now, in full disclosure, I'm a non-conformer, so I get this. So let's first talk about the nature of the conflict. Non-conformers tend to think independently, act independently, and are, non-conformists. They're not really interested in falling into step with everybody else. They march to their own drummer. This means that when they approach a problem, they often come at it from a different direction. They're looking at it through a different lens, a lens that others on the team may not fully understand, appreciate, or agree with altogether. This creates conflict because while the low conformer is saying, we need to look at it this way, and we need to get out of this old pattern of doing things, the rest of the group is like, would you just stop pushing back on everything and help us get to resolution? We've got budgets, we've got deadlines, we need to get to work. And the low conformer is like, you know what? There's no point in doing it if all we're going to do is keep doing things the same way we always do. So yeah, this leads into why are they this way? Well, they consider some traditional approaches to be more the product of bureaucratic inertia rather than true outside-the-box thinking. They want to look at each problem independently, look at the environment and the conditions and the goals and the constraints independently, and figure out the right course of action, one that may be outside the norm. They're concerned that everybody else is just doing the same thing the way they've always done it without really critically analyzing the conditions or the problem. They're kind of like, listen, you can't just keep doing things the same way and expecting different results. If we're going to push this company or team or project forward, we need to think creatively. Okay, so now how do you deal with these people? Well, there's a few things. First of all, really resist the urge to force them to conform. They're going to push back on this. It is not going to help you. You need to give them the space to be who they are. Next, validate their contributions where you can. One of the aspects of low conformers is that when they speak up, they're often sort of dogpiled by people saying, you don't know what you're talking about, that's ridiculous, get out of the room. And so they're like, dude, I have something to contribute here, you need to listen. So by validating where you can, you're letting them know that they're being heard. Next, you want to support them when others are being overly critical. In other words, you need to kind of hear them and sort of see the world from their perspective. And if others are just jumping on them without really listening to what they're saying, you need to say, no, we need to slow down and listen to this person. I think they have some good points. Please continue. Because it's a gut reaction for many people to just try to shut down the low conformers. However, you can't just let them run amok. You need to keep them laser focused on the constraints. Things like time, budget, stakeholder expectations. These are the things that the team needs to deliver to. And if you're getting in the way of that, well, now you're being less helpful and more of a hindrance. Okay. Now let's talk about envious or ambitious people. The nature of their conflict is really rooted in their desire to receive or achieve something that they feel like is being held back from them. So perhaps they want position or influence or a work assignment, something of this nature. They want these things, they're not getting these things, and so their domain of self-worth or their objectives in their career, they're being challenged. Now, this creates conflict with the team because the rest of the team is like, dude, you're just getting in the way of everything. You're power hungry. You're trying to usurp things. You're getting in the way of others doing their job because you think you need to do everything or that you can do it better. This creates conflict. But now let's understand why they are this way. And you get it. We all have goals in our lives and we all want to achieve certain things. And so when we perceive that something is being held back, something that we really want, well, this creates inner conflict for us. We're always comparing ourselves with others, and in fact, many organizations encourage us to compare ourselves with others in terms of performance, dedication, contribution, and so forth. And so, yeah, it's actually in our best interest professionally to desire things like position, status, and pay, and work assignments, and things like this. So it's understandable that somebody may want these things and feel inner conflict as a result. And don't get too hard on these folks. The truth is, channeled properly, this sentiment is what drives us forward. This is what makes us set goals and work hard and dedicate ourselves to whatever we're working on because we desire these things. This is a driver toward progress, and that's a good thing. So, as a people manager, how do you deal with these folks? Well, the first thing is help them understand and articulate what they actually want. Truth is, we're not always real certain about what we want in our careers. We feel like we are being denied something that we are due or something that we really want, but we're not always sure what that thing is. Help them understand and articulate what that thing is. Next, give them opportunities to actually acquire that which they want. Help them map out, say, a development plan so that they can see a clear path to them achieving what they want to achieve. This means being a career coach to the person, following up with them, helping to guide them through the different junctures that they will need to navigate in order to get the outcome that they're seeking. And you'll want to give them, say, low-hanging fruit opportunities to execute to this. If they have this plan on how to get what they want, whether it be status, position, influence, or work position, something of this nature, you need to actually give them the tactical opportunities to do the things that will lead to this desired outcome. If they can see progress against schedule, if they can see that they are moving in the direction they want to, they will introduce less conflict to the team. Okay, the next group I want to talk about, again, putting things in horrendously simplistic terms, is the complainers. It's not hard to understand the nature of the conflict when it comes to complainers. They get in the way of the project being done. They're bringing this negative vibe to the table. And furthermore, whether explicitly or implicitly, complainers insult the performance of others on the team. Furthermore, it's one thing to complain inside the team. Okay, we're not airing our dirty laundry. But many complainers will take their complaints outside the team and will basically dump on anyone who will listen. This just compounds the conflict. So why are complainers like this? Well, once again, there's a positive impetus behind this dysfunctional behavior. Complaining is just really an ugly way of identifying a problem and wanting things to be better. Think about it. Anytime we have had product improvement or life improvement or improvement in any sphere of life, it's because somebody somewhere complained about the current state and felt that there could be a brighter future on the other end of some work. And so they identified the need for the work and other people agreed and they went off and did something awesome. Complainers are really just identifying a need for things to be better. Now, granted, they're doing it in a rather indelicate fashion, but their heart is in the right place. I mean, most of the time. Ultimately, they are expressing a lack of tolerance for what they perceive as mediocre. And you know what? That's a good thing. All right, so how do you deal with these complainers as a people manager? Well, the first thing you want to do is you want to listen to them. Now, not too much because they can really go on a tear. But you want to listen to them and really try to see the world from their position. Now, as you're listening to them, you want to do frequent reality checks. Look for facts, not just opinions or implications. Because yes, you want to channel this energy they have toward a positive resolution, but that's not going to happen if they're just spouting off nonsense. Make sure you're staying true to the facts. Next, ask for possible solutions, as well as a willingness to implement these solutions. One thing I often say is, if you come to me and complain, just know that I'm not listening. On the other hand, if you come to me and complain and offer a variety of solutions, you've now got my attention. And if you come to me, complain, offer solutions, and then express a willingness to implement these solutions, I am now your champion. You want to convert your complainers into people whom you can champion. Next, let's talk about passive or unresponsive people. The nature of this conflict is really rooted in their disdain for conflict. They don't like open, ugly, nasty, in-your-face conflict. And so they try to avoid it. And by avoiding it, they shut down and really kind of cease to engage with the group. Now, this creates conflict in the group because, all right, people always kind of notice this quiet person over there who never contributes. And then furthermore, when they're asked to do something, they kind of hem and haw about it. And then even if they do commit to doing it, the chances of them actually following through are slim to none. Yeah, this creates group conflict. So why are they like this? Well, a possible reason could be that they're not fully committed to the vision, to the objective that the team is working toward. Remember in an earlier module, I said that to have a performing team, you needed to have shared understanding of the objective. Well, if you fail to do that and these low conformers don't share your vision for what you're trying to accomplish, they're not going to fully engage. They're not going to commit to the success of the team. Another possible reason may be that they do not feel that their contributions are being fully valued. Maybe they spoke up a couple of times and their contributions were either ignored or shut down, so they're like, I'm out. Speaking as a nonconformer who is frequently shut down in a meeting, yeah, I've often then taken on this persona of the passive, unresponsive person. If I feel like my contributions are not being valued, then I'm out. Finally, let's face it, in many meetings, conflict and tempers and passion can really start to get pretty vigorous, shall we say. These folks may not be fully comfortable in that kind of conflict. And so when the big voices start to bang on the table and people start yelling and screaming, they will slowly fade into the background and say, I ain't touching this. Okay, so as a people manager, how do you re-engage those who are, being somewhat unresponsive? Well, the first thing you can do is ask open-ended questions of them directly, I mean. So an open-ended question is one that can't just be answered with yes or no. It requires some sort of thought and explanation and dialogue. By asking open-ended questions, you really invite them to once again start contributing. Next, ask for specific contributions, things that are specific to a particular problem or solution that we're trying to develop. That way they have some sort of boundaries around what they're supposed to do, and this helps keep them focused on in what way they're supposed to contribute. Next, when they do speak up, validate their contributions. Remember, one of the reasons, perhaps, that they are not contributing is because in the past they felt like anything they did say was either ignored or just overtly shut down. So when they do contribute, validate what they say and really help fold it into the discussion. This way they will feel a little bit more self-worth and like they are contributing something of value to the team. This will in turn lead to future contributions, and this is the goal. Finally, back them up when others on the team are pushing back, say, maybe a little too aggressively. Now, there's nothing wrong with good, vigorous debate and the push and pull and all that good stuff, but some people are a little too aggressive in pushing back. So as a people manager, you can really communicate to this, up until this point, unresponsive person that you have their back and that they're not alone in any battle they try to fight. Finally, we have our excuse makers. The nature of their conflict is not hard to imagine. They don't like to take personal responsibility or be held accountable for anything. So when something goes sideways, they're all like, it's not my fault. This obviously creates conflict in the team because, as we discussed in our previous module, a core tenet of a performing team is accountability. When somebody does not hold themselves accountable or does not allow the team to hold them accountable, this breaks everything down. So why are they this way? Well, it's not hard to understand. They're afraid of the shame that may come with the perception of failure. It's important to us to feel like we have a place in the organization, and that place is contingent on the value we bring to the organization. So if we feel like we are connected with a failure, with a mistake, this jeopardizes our place in the organization. It jeopardizes our relationship. It jeopardizes our ability to earn a living and put food on the table. So yeah, it makes sense that we may want to distance ourselves from the failure. Okay, so how do we resolve this kind of conflict? Well, first, don't dismiss them out of hand. When they say, it's not my fault, it was this, and this, maybe it was this, and this. And if you just discount what they say without investigating what they are referring to, you may be closing your eyes to some serious root issues that need resolution. Next, don't be afraid to ask questions. This is where you may want to practice, say, the 5 whys. If they say, it's not my fault and yada, 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 well, why? Why were you working on this instead? Why were you unable to complete this? Why did you not have the resources that you required? Why did you not feel that you were properly supported? This way, you and they together can come to a mutual understanding of the root issue. Next, rather than expressing anger, express disappointment. It's just a natural response. When somebody expresses anger toward us, we feel attacked, and so there's this knee-jerk reaction to defend ourselves. Whereas when we feel that we have disappointed somebody, this now goes at our domain of self-worth. This is where we start to feel like, you know what? I let somebody down who I did not want to let down. This jeopardizes my place in the organization and in the team. I need to respond to this. Now, this isn't to say it's easy or pretty or pleasant or anything like that, but it invites a little bit more internal thinking and processing of the situation than the feeling of being attacked via anger would bring about. Next, help the excuse maker save face. Now, remember, one of the reasons that they're making excuses is because they're afraid of the shame that comes about through relationship to the failure. So one of the ways that you can help amend their behavior is by reducing the shame that they feel somewhat. I mean, there's shame. That's going to be felt. We get that. But you don't want to load it on them because then they'll just shut down and isolate themselves in a shell. They'll go to ground and you'll never see them again. So you want to kind of help them save face to reduce the sting of the shame felt. Finally, you want to set clear expectations and follow up on these expectations. Remember, in our previous module on setting goals and expectations, we talked about the importance of setting clear expectations, smart objectives. It may be that one of the reasons this person is making excuses is because they didn't really have a good, clear, sound understanding of what success looked like in the first place. By setting clear expectations, and it may be that you're just reiterating them, and now they're listening because, well, their careers are on the line. Nevertheless, the point is, by setting clear expectations, you set a clear target for them to march toward. And then by following up frequently, you can make sure that they are making progress against those expectations. So there's an overview of why we experience conflict and the different ways that we can resolve conflict in our teams. Now, you've probably noticed that a lot of this starts to kind of drift into performance management, and that's what we're going to talk about in our next module. So stick around. There's a lot of good stuff yet to come. So yeah, let's stay on track. All right? Hey, thanks a lot for joining today, and until we talk again, have a fantastic day.